Okay, lovely. Welcome everyone to this creative conversation, one foot in both islands. So my name's Adam McGuigan, and I'm the artistic director at Wake the Beast. We've been doing these creative conversations for the past couple of years, and this series is supported by the Irish Embassy in London through their immigrant support program. So we're really grateful to be a part of that network. What the background to the creative conversations has been is that we have found a really interesting way of communicating with the diaspora outside of the island of Ireland. We've used theatre, we've used music, we've used poetry, and tonight we're going to give a little bit of a snippet of a particular play written by Kate Reid, who's one of the panelists today as well. We found that it's been a really interesting way of mobilising the diaspora, specifically the Northern Irish diaspora, but not exclusively the Northern Irish diaspora. We find there's a lot of activities that is related to Irish diaspora outside of the island, but not so much with the Northern Irish diaspora. So I think tonight's going to have a particular focus on that. Again, as I say, this is really a forum for people to have conversations. So we'll start a little bit of the discussion, but then we really hope to open it up as much as possible and to get your views and your experiences. And that's when it's really been at its richest, is whenever people feel that they can contribute to the conversation as well. The proceedings tonight are being recorded, so we will upload this to YouTube. So again, only say what you're comfortable saying. And at this point, I'd really like to just let you know there's another one happening next week, which has a different focus. I'll explain a little bit more about that towards the end of this one. We usually work for about 1 hour, but we can't go up to 75 minutes. So feel free to stay on for as long as you can. But if you need to go, we understand that's absolutely fine as well. The format is very relaxed. As I say, it's mostly, we've got a couple of participants on the panel who will give us their perspective. And then as much as possible, it's really nice to keep it really informal and just to hear from you as much as we can. So at this point, I would just like to introduce three people who are with us this evening. We have Hannah McLean, who is an actor, originally from Ballymoney. We have Kate Reid, who is a writer performer. She's going to tell us a little bit more about one specific piece that she's written in a second. And then we also have Roisin Fletcher, who works at the London Irish Centre. So without further ado, Kate, I'd like to start with you. So Kate, are you able to just tell us a little bit about, the reason we kind of met was because I came to see your play, The Fourth Country, which was at the Park Theatre earlier this year, and was very, very taken with lots of the themes, with lots of the ideas, and with your particular voice. Are you able to tell us a little bit about the piece and how you came to write it, Kate?
Yeah, of course. So for context, I'm half Northern Irish and I'm half English. My mum's Northern Irish, my dad's Liverpudlian, but I was raised primarily in London. But we go home a lot. Our farm's still out there. My nana's still out there. So I've always kind of felt quite split between my Northern Irishness and my Englishness. And when I started writing in about 2019, that was a pretty big year for Northern Irish politics. There was a lot going on. And I was just a bit stunned by how much my English friends didn't know, and how little I was seeing it a lot in the press, which I think has improved over the last couple of years. But in 2019, I was particularly shocked that it wasn't really being reported on as much. So when I started writing, I decided to set a lot of the smaller bits and pieces that I was writing for scratch nights in Northern Ireland. And then those little bits and pieces eventually became what was The Fourth Country, which went on this year.
Okay, lovely. You talked a bit about your inspiration about writing it when there wasn't much coverage about what was happening in 2019. Is that something you've been interested in for a while? Had that been brewing? Had that been something that had been moving around in your head for a while, or was it particular?
Yeah, I like it definitely had, just in terms of, being someone with Northern Irish heritage, you're just always more aware of stories rather than just having the purely English perspective. So it'd always been something I've been vaguely aware of, but it really came to a head in 2019. And once I'd started writing about it, I realized I couldn't stop, and there were just so many different things that I wanted to address that it escaped the tiny scratch night pieces I was writing, and it just had to become a bigger story.
Yeah, I mean, you covered a lot in the piece. You really did. There was a lot of content that you covered in the piece, and one of the most interesting out of a lot of beautiful elements was your particular voice in telling these stories, which we'll talk about a little bit further. But for now, we're just going to give everybody just a little bit of an extract for one of the scenes from The Fourth Country. And Hannah is going to play one of the characters. Kate's going to play one of the characters and read the stage directions, and I'm going to play two of the characters. So we'll just give you a little bit of a taster of one of the scenes. Kate, do you want to give us a little bit of context for what we're about to hear?
Yeah, sure. So this is the second scene in the play. It comes very early on. And the first scene that's just ended was a conversation between two civil servants in the closed down Stormont. And what's happened is those two civil servants have been discussing a particular case. A man has burst into their office, told them his name and demanded, "Do you know who I am?" And at that moment, Rachel, one of our lovely actors, who had been planted in the audience from the beginning of the show, from before they came in, stands up and interrupts the entire play and brings the whole thing to a grinding halt. So that's what's just happened.
Okay, lovely. So we'll start with you, Kate.
Rachel interrupts the scene. Cormac, Aoife, and Kate freeze in position. Everyone is painfully aware of the audience.
Wait, just wait.
There is a beat where no one knows what to do. Cormac breaks first.
What?
Not yet. Just not yet.
But that's the next bit of the scene, right? It is. It's the next bit of the scene.
Kate?
All actors look to Kate, who is frozen in position.
Kate, please.
Kate concedes. She takes off the element of clothing that was making her character, Melanie. "Oh, for Christ's sake, Rachel!" Kate apologizes to the audience.
I'm sorry. We have to go back. We can't start the story here. We can't start with September.
Why not?
Well, because you keep trying to get yourself an Irish coffee, for one thing.
Sure, what's wrong with a whiskey on a Monday morning, huh?
What next, Aoife? Should we have the leprechauns come out and join us?
Okay, Rach.
Or maybe the banshees?
We're just giving people what they want.
Then maybe we could all stand in a wee line and do a wee dance.
Oh, can we?
Rachel is exasperated. Sure, maybe we'll save the dance for later.
But they love a wee jig. Look at them. Do they look like they just love a wee jig?
I'm not dancing.
Well, if there's no whiskey, no leprechauns, and no dancing, what the hell do you want us to do? Kate?
Why are you asking me?
Well, you wrote the bloody thing.
Yes, but none of you are saying your bloody lines.
Look, I'm with Rach. I think we should go back, do the whole story.
Thank you, Cormac.
But that's not what we agreed. Kate gestures at the audience. They're all here now.
They'll still get what they came for.
Well,
not a jig. I mean, they'll still get a story. It just shouldn't start here. There's so much else to show them.
Okay, fine. We won't do September yet, but we'll have to get to it at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Just later.
All right.
So where are we starting from then?
Let's go back 5 months. 5 months before Stormont, April 2019.
I said where, not when.
Oh, Jesus Christ. We'll start in Londonderry.
You mean Derry?
Sure. Derry. Londonderry. Derry, Londonderry.
Right. The Catholics say Derry. The Protestants say Londonderry.
So we compromise by calling it Derry, Londonderry.
The road signs are a nightmare.
So where are we in Derry, Londonderry?
We're in a living room in a flat. Cormac and Rachel start transforming the space into a flat as Kate and Aoife argue. One piece of the set must be removed from the stage by one of the 4 actors.
Oh, is this the scene in my flat?
No, not yet. You're not in this bit.
When do I get to come back on?
Soon.
Am I playing Shona again?
No, you'll be playing Anna next.
Oh, the lawyer. Why are my jobs always so boring?
I'll give you a nicer office next time.
Oh, sure, now you're just spoiling me.
Oh, and don't forget, Anna's English.
Now you're just spoiling me.
Aoife leaves the stage. Cormac and Rachel have finished transforming the set.
So it's...
You're flat. Yeah. You know what to do?
I'm good.
Kate gives a thumbs up to the tech box. Kate goes to leave the stage.
Kate?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Kate leaves the stage. Rachel and Cormac remain. Lights change.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much for that, Hannah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kate. So yeah, Kate, do you want to just tell us a little bit more, just picking up from there, about how the story develops from where we've just left it?
Yes, sure. So essentially what happens next is that the actors have kind of agreed to continue with the story from an earlier point to try and give some context for the moment we find ourselves in at the very beginning of the play. And so they go on to tell the story of this particular family, Connor and Neve, these two siblings. And through Connor and Neve and their experiences, we address subjects like Soldier F's trial, and the changing abortion laws and the closure of Stormont. But we kind of see it all through the lens of their particular sibling dynamic.
Lovely. And Kate, I spoke about this a little bit earlier, but I mean, I was so struck by the whole way through, whenever you broke that convention of the straight narrative, and you were talking as the playwright, but you had a Northern Irish accent throughout the whole piece. When you did break that convention, up until the end, when you revealed your own accent, which was an English accent, and really put a different spin on everything as an audience member, which really was, that's kind of what I was really interested in talking to you about today, because it was quite confronting, and it was definitely something very memorable, which is when we started these conversations. So can you tell us what the idea was behind this, and what the reaction was with that, and why you chose to use that particular device?
Yeah, of course. So it was important to me that, having been raised mainly in London and speaking as I do, that I wasn't out there being like, I am a voice of authority on all things Northern Irish, and I'm in charge of the way that this story gets told. It was quite important to me that I sort of acknowledged, like, I do have sort of a foot in both worlds. And so the way to do that was to break down the fourth wall and to be like, yes, I'm the writer, yes, I'm telling this story, but also to give my actors the opportunity to argue with me and to argue from their cultural context and from their area of Northern Ireland and from their faith and from their family. So those arguments are sort of littered throughout the piece and come to a climax when I sort of stand up and reveal to the audience that my accent is English, not the Northern Irish accent that I've been putting on in those moments. And it's the fellow actors who are like, Kate, come on, it's time to be properly honest with the audience now. If we're going to break down the fourth wall, let's break down everything. Use your own voice. And that was always one of my favorite moments in the play, because sometimes when I'd start speaking like this, you'd get like a gasp from the audience, because they would feel so betrayed, because we'd broken down so many elements of the fourth wall, like we'd spoken directly to them, we were using our real names in the script, that the idea that we've been holding back this one thing from them, which was that I actually sound like this, people were quite annoyed, it was great. That was sort of the response we were looking for. So yeah, that's sort of where that moment came from. It came from me being like, I need to acknowledge my Englishness, and then hand over the story to Rachel and Cormac, who are both Northern Irish and have Northern Irish accents, and the play ends with just the two of them on stage having their moment.
It really does. It really did, as an audience member, did put you in that moment of thinking, wow, whose story is this to tell? That was kind of what you talked about. But then it's interesting, as a second generation Irish person, Northern Irish person, however you identify, like, why wouldn't that be your story to tell as well? It was really quite an interesting conversation and dialogue, which is kind of what we're talking about today. Can you tell us what you spoke about gasps in the audience, but can you tell us any of the other reactions you had from people about that particular moment?
Well, it's really interesting you say that about like whose story it is to tell. We had some fascinating conversations in the rehearsal room, because for context, we did this show for the first time in 2020 at Vault Festival, just before everything shut down. And we were meant to do this transfer to the park in summer of 2020, but then it got delayed until January 2022. So that meant that we actually, as a cast, had a lot of time to become really good friends. And so we ended up having a lot of very honest conversations about like our own Irishness and how comfortable we were with certain lines. And there are certain things in the script that changed because Rachel or Cormac or Aoife were like, actually, I don't think I'd say that. I don't think that's what I would say in that moment. And so that was invaluable, getting their input on the script and having a 2-year gap where I could work on it and try and incorporate their real voices more. But yeah, sorry, what was the question?
Well, I'm just to move on a little bit. I'm just interested in that power dynamic as well, because if you're writing a play which is set in Northern Ireland about Northern Ireland issues, and you, as you said at the beginning, have a foot in both islands, but these, some of the performers grew up there. What does that, what's that power dynamic like? Is there times when you felt, well, you had to listen to what they said, or was there times when you said, well, actually I have my own voice, my own perspective, and my own history of growing up around in that community, or London Irish being a specific community in itself?
I definitely think that like there is a feeling of kind of like insecurity, I think, for people who are second generation, being like you almost need to like prove your Northern Irish credentials. And it was really interesting because getting to know Rachel and Cormac better, they were both like, why do you feel like that? That's not something that they were bringing to the table. That was very much sort of my own sense of what they would be expecting from me. But I do think there are spaces in which, speaking as I do, I'm not always the most welcome, or people make certain assumptions about me that aren't necessarily correct. But when it came down to things of like having those discussions, there wasn't necessarily ever a sense of like, okay, well, you've got supremacy in this moment, I have supremacy in this moment. It was always just a dialogue and a conversation between all of us, and kind of everyone's voice was equal, and I would sort of take little bits from everyone and go away and try and fashion it into something that we were all comfortable with. But yeah, it was very, very interesting having Rachel and Cormac's perspective as people who actually grew up full-time in Northern Ireland. Like when we were casting the play, I was adamant that those two parts had to be true to the actors, like that it had to match their personal experience, because we definitely needed their input in the rehearsal room.
Okay, lovely. We're going to read a little bit from the play a little bit later in the session, but at this point I want to bring in our second celebrity VIP, Roisin Fletcher. So Roisin, if you can unmute yourself and just give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I have a creative background. I have worked with Adam as well in Liverpool and in other places around the UK. And I was based in Liverpool for a long time as well. And then in 2019, I moved back to London. I'm London born and bred. But I'm third generation Irish, which is going to put a statistic in your in this. It's my both sets of grandparents. The father's side of Tipperary, mum's side of Donegal, and I have sort of floated into the event management world. And I am now the commercial side at the London Irish Centre. I'm the event manager, but we work very close together with the culture team, who are also on this call. And it's all about promoting Irish arts, Irish culture, Irish values, in and around London, and at the centre as well. But we're also essentially a community space as well. So we're open to the community of Camden. So anyone and everyone is welcome here. And it's my job to keep the ship afloat.
Lovely. But Roisin, tell us a little bit more personally about you. Like, how do you identify? What's your, because we've had some interesting conversations, and I think it's really fascinating about your family and, your background and how much you're connected to your culture.
I suppose I've never actually, and they're on this call as well, I've never actually had a fully straight conversation with my parents as to why we identify so strongly with our Irish heritage, because I think there's no elephant in the room. I feel like we all know. I have struggled with my identity pretty much my whole life. So I remember being in primary school, because I've always had an Irish passport. I have never had a British passport. And telling kids at school, and then being like, "What? But you're English, you know?" And me being like, "Yeah, but I'm Irish." So I feel like I've really struggled. It got better at like secondary school. I found people who were very similar to me, second, third generation, and we're still best friends. So I suppose that softened it. And I think the identity became less of Irish and more London Irish, which is like a whole, like another branch. Essentially, it's like another county. So I felt a lot stronger with that. And then once I got to university and went to Liverpool, I was Liverpool has like a really strong Irish community, but at university there's a massive Northern Irish community, and there was a lot of them on my course, and I became very close with them. And I suppose it's very interesting. I find Northern Irish people more welcoming to the idea of me being Irish than I do some from the Republic. So I think, and that's not always, I'm not, branching everyone with that stick, but that's how it comes across. But then all the lines fixed, and now I'm at the Irish Centre, so I'm not just London Irish, I'm Irish, I'm a Londoner here. I'm trying to support everyone and do everything in the right way here for everyone. So if anything, it's like I'm on like Irish acid at the moment. Like everything it's quite intense. I'm having to talk about Ireland quite a lot.
You can make a lot of money from that Irish acid. I think you should trademark that, Roisin.
I actually think it's the Irish Centre should just sell it. I think it's probably already at the bar anyway. So
that's the next conversation. But I just wanted to ask both of you, Kate and Roisin, and everybody, guys, if you do want to put anything in the chat, it is now, we are starting the conversation. So it'd be really great to get your views and your thoughts. And if you want to speak as well, just let me know and I'll put the focus onto you. But, we talk about, so you've both said about your experiences. And I suppose lots of the diaspora, we've been having these conversations, and a lot of it, including with myself, who now lives outside of the island of Ireland, I've got this mythical idea of home being a very specific place. And for me, it's always Ireland. So, I mean, I've lived in England for years and I've lived other places, but home for me is always Ireland. I'm interested for you guys, if I asked you that question, what's your response to this mythical idea of home for you?
Yeah, I think that definitely rings true for me as well. Like we always go back in the summer and spent every Christmas of my life at our family farm over there, and I always refer to it as going home, which has actually led to some confusion with English friends of mine being like round the corner. I'm like, no, I have to get on the plane. But yeah, I think that really rings true for me, that London is also my home, definitely, but I think you can have two places you call home. Like most of my earliest childhood memories are all in Castlederg, so I think the idea of the mythical sense of home and somewhere where you feel like you belong and you're at peace, yeah, I definitely feel that way about it as well. But it is interesting feeling kind of pulled between two homes, I guess, but also you could see that as an embarrassment of riches,
Yeah. Roisin?
I would agree. With the mythical, personally, I wouldn't use the word home. London is home for me, but when I go to Ireland, just you can feel it in your blood and in your waters. It's something very strange, but I feel very comfortable and I feel very no, this is where I'm meant to be. It depends which part I go to as well. If I go to Donegal, which is where we spent every summer holiday and in fact every holiday, and is where my grandmother's side for, like, we do certain things and it's like weird, it's like a wave comes over me and I'm like, oh, it's like it must be my ancestors basically. But I feel very, very comfortable, and I have worked in Derry as well for when it was City of Culture, and it is one of the best jobs I've ever had because I felt so at home, even though I had never lived in Derry before. I had visited it because we're very close from where we are in Donegal. But everyone's just so welcoming and lovely, and everyone could say my name properly.
That's so interesting, actually, as well, being able to say your name. And I'm interested, Russian, I wonder if that was your ancestors, or if you were on the Irish acid again. But I'm interested in the reception as well. I give a little example. Whenever me and some of my mates went to work in America when we were very young in the summers, and we obviously had a different accent, and people would say to us, "Oh, where are you from?" And we would say Ireland, and people would say frequently, "Oh, I'm Irish as well." And we always were kind of like, yeah, right, where are you from in Ireland? And sometimes people would say Glasgow and whatever. So we were always a bit, we smiled because we wanted to get tips, but we probably raised our eyes as well. I'm interested. I had a conversation with my cousin who was born in Wales, but really identifies as Irish. And she had a really interesting perspective about having an accent when you are in Ireland and saying you're from Ireland. I'm interested in your experiences and how, if you've had anything similar or.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a big part of feeling like you belong somewhere, sounding like you come from there. And I've definitely had moments where, I've been traveling to various bits of Ireland and Northern Ireland, being like, oh yeah, I'm Northern Irish as well. And you do feel people be like, are you sure? But then the flip side of things is that sometimes I'll say words or sentences that I don't realize are coming out sounding really Northern Irish, and someone will catch me out and be like, hang on, are you a bit Northern Irish? I'll be like, oh my God, yes, how did you know? So like it goes both ways, but it is definitely an interesting thing, like being somewhere and declaring yourself as something when people have assumed that I think you were saying earlier, using like the accent of the occupier. It's quite a tricky balance, I'd say. But lucky I come from a very, very small town. So everyone around there knows who we are. So it's fine.
Roisin?
Yeah, I've never identified ever as English. But when I am in Ireland and my accent comes out, I would say actually it's got better through time. I think if you have to remember as well, like if you had an Irish accent in certain parts of Ireland, in certain parts of London, you'd get in a lot of trouble, or you were just bullied or victimized. And I think I'm from the generation that was coming, the generation before me is coming out of that very, very slowly. And then I'm the next one, which is like, oh, are we okay? And then we're sort of coming out of it now. And, because there's a generation below us who you could speak any language. It doesn't matter. You're Irish. And everyone's treated the same. So because of that, I think it gets better as the years go on for me. And yeah, I would say, I mean, if you go to parts of, where your family are, people just already automatically know that you have an English accent, so it's fine. But yeah, if I was to go somewhere new, I suppose there would be a question of, oh, where are you from? Like, but I just always say I've always had an Irish passport. So I think once I say that, people just go, oh, okay.
Well, that's interesting, because also one of the things at the minute with Brexit and everything is the amount of people who are claiming an Irish passport for other reasons. Sounds different to what you're talking about, which is identity and culture and belonging. But people having Irish passports now, being able to access Irish passports because of Brexit, and being able to then utilize that for other benefits of being able to work in Europe. And so that's an interesting kind of adaptation, I feel, on this topic as well.
I would say that I actually find it quite interesting. A majority of people, though, that are claiming now an Irish passport to, yes, stay within the EU and use it to their benefit, I suppose. But I think once they get the passport, it's almost a sense of protest. And then from that, there's like a sense, the new sense of identity starts to dawn on people. And I think it's like, God, yeah, like my granny was from Ireland. I should probably look into that. And then we know like family ancestry is a massive business. And then that happens. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's almost a trickling thing. Not for everyone. Yeah, some people are definitely using it for different reasons. But I would say that has definitely happened. I know it's happened in my family on my dad's cousin. Again, they're third generation, third generation, and their father, my dad's cousin, has just got his passport, and they have never thought about getting an Irish passport. And then during the summer, my cousin comes over because she doesn't actually know that much about her Irish side, and she wants to know more, and dad gets the photos out, and there is this new sense of connection, and the diaspora just goes even more than again.
Yeah. I'm really interested in this idea of the role of the second or third generation as well. I mean, going back to your play, Kate, as well, I thought that was something very important about your role as a second generation Irish person, about creating work which comments and which is performed in England and is illuminating issues and being a kind of a voice and a platform for really important issues from the north of the country, which I find really important, actually. But just before we get into that, and also, folks, I'm really keen to open this up. So I know we've got people who are first, second, third generation. I know we've got people who are living in Ireland, living in Northern Ireland. I'm really interested because everybody has stories about this and everybody's got their own experiences. So I'd love to open it up for people to share. And certainly if you've got any questions as well. But maybe just at this point, we'll just go back to Kate's play, and I'll invite Hannah and Kate you're going to read another scene from the play. And maybe Kate, if you can just give us a little bit of context about what we're just about to hear.
Yeah, of course. So this scene comes quite late in the play. We're jumping ahead in the narrative now, and this is sort of a scene that happens within the narrative. We're not breaking the fourth wall. This is two characters talking to each other. One of them is Neve, who is, I'd say, the lead character of the play, who we've been following through a year in her life, and the other one is Melanie, who is one of the civil servants that we met at the very, very beginning of the play. They're strangers, and this is the first time that they meet, and actually the only time that they meet in the entire play.
Okay, lovely. And so, Kate, you're going to play Neve. You're going to play Melanie, sorry, and Hannah, you're going to play Neve, and I'll read the stage directions. Okay, so July 2019, a bus stop in Derry, London Derry. Melanie is sitting, rolling a cigarette. Neve sits down next to her, very close. They are strangers, a silence.
Can I help you?
Probably not.
Right. Well, just you're sitting quite close.
Oh, right, sorry.
Neve moves a centimetre further away from Melanie.
Grand, thanks.
It's been a beautiful day.
Yeah, it has.
The light's fading.
It is, yeah.
I'll have to go home soon.
Well, don't let me keep you.
Do you know what time it is?
It's 7:20.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What time does the bus come?
You've got another 10 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is it usually on time?
Oh, Jesus, I don't. Yeah, it's usually on time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Indicating the cigarette Melanie has just finished rolling.
Have you another one of those?
Do you want the keys to my car as well?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Sorry, just I'm having a bad day, so you can have this one.
Oh no, I can wait.
Just take it. I shouldn't be having it anyway.
Oh. Trying to quit?
As of about 20 minutes ago. Yeah.
Good for you. Lighter?
Jesus wept, woman.
Sorry.
Sure, would you stop apologising for everything?
Well, would you stop yelling at me for everything?
Fair point.
Melanie digs out her lighter and tries to hand it to Neve. Neve's mobile rings.
Ah, damn it. So 1 second, sorry.
A look from Melanie.
I mean, no, not sorry. I mean, Christ.
Neve answers the phone.
Hello? All right, Con.
Neve moves away from Melanie. Melanie puts the lighter down on the bench, trying to look like she's not listening.
Yeah, I'm fine. Everything's fine. No, it's nothing.
Neve glances at Melanie and lowers her voice.
Did you see Da on the TV again? Sorry. I didn't realize you were busy. Yeah, I can let Mom know. So listen, will I be seeing you?
Connor hangs up on Neve. Neve looks down at her phone.
Soon.
Neve puts her phone back in her pocket.
Boyfriend?
Brother.
Right. You're not going to tell him?
Tell him what?
Building across the street you just walked out of. I walked out of it 20 minutes before you did.
Right.
Pointing at the cigarette in Neve's hand.
Meaning that neither of us should be smoking that bloody thing.
Neve looks at the cigarette in her hand, tries to hand it back to Melanie.
Jeez, well, don't tempt me with it. I only managed to get rid of it by giving it to you.
They share a smile.
I'm Melanie. Mel, for short.
It's nice to meet you, Mel. I'm Neve.
Hi, Neve.
Lovely. Thank you both for that. Kate, can you just give us a bit more information about what that scene is? I think it's interesting from what I've just said earlier about the role of the second, third generation Irish in what I think that's a really good illustration of what can be done to profile certain issues or topics.
Yes, of course. So the context that emerges in that scene is that both Melanie and Neve have just found out, Melanie's just found out that she's pregnant. Neve has known that she's pregnant, but she's just found out that the fetus will not survive, but that she is going to have to carry it to term because the place set in a period where abortion was not legal in Northern Ireland. And it's the two of them sat there both processing what it is they're going to do, what their very, very limited options are. And it's sort of about these two women who are strangers kind of helping one another through the worst moment of both of their lives.
Obviously, that was a big thing in the North, the whole conversation and dialogue around abortion. So that was something you felt drawn to illuminate or to write about?
Yeah, definitely. It was one of the things that actually really didn't change at all from the first time that we did the play to when we did it 3 years later. This scene was pretty much unchanged and was one of the only bits of the play that didn't shift, at least a little bit. And it was interesting, like the process of writing whilst all of those changes were happening. Sometimes we would do that scene and it would be like quite hopeful because things were actually changing in the real world, and then other times it would be quite depressing because there still aren't services available to this day for women to actually access legal abortion. So it was definitely something I feel very, very strongly about, and it was definitely something I knew I wanted to address, but I wanted to do it in a way in which the women were the ones speaking, that there was no one else in the scene, that they weren't victims of any other character in that moment. It was just the two of them helping each other and processing it together.
Lovely, thank you. At this point, I want to open it up to people. If people have got questions or kind of the topic we've been talking about this evening is what are the complexities of having a Northern Irish identity or an Irish identity and an English accent or a different accent. We talked about having a foot in both islands, and does that ring true? So I'm interested to hear from other people who are on the call as well, or if anybody has other questions that they want to put out there or to ask Kate, Hannah or Roisin. So I don't know if anyone wants to say anything or to ask anything, just feel free to unmute yourself or put any questions or comments in the chat at all. So don't make this awkward bit where I'm left hanging for like minutes while nobody says anything. Somebody help me out and be the first. When these conversations are richest, it's whenever we get as many people's perspective as possible. So again, it can be a comment on what you've just seen, or it can be a question or any type of reflection. But I'm sweating. I see the clock moving. Anyone at all? If you just, and if you, as I say, if you want to unmute yourself, or if you just want to put something in the chat, whichever people are more comfortable with. Is that, Tricia, is that you unmuting yourself? Not sure if that's a question from Tricia. I can see someone unmuting themselves. Maybe just while we're waiting to see if that is someone's waiting to unmute themselves. I mean, we talked about the complexities, Kate and Roisin. Is there anything, is there anything you can speak to of that in addition to what you said earlier, that dichotomy?
Yeah, I would say for the first time in a very, very long time, it wasn't a bad situation. It was just very interesting that it hasn't happened for a long time, and it was interesting for it to come from my generation, but they are from Ireland. So my girlfriend is from Dublin, and her friends live over here as well. So everyone is from Dublin, either working or studying over here. And one night we were talking about Northern Ireland, and it was on the news. And we were just having a couple of cans around the telly, and I had said a comment which was like, yeah, but it's this happens all the time. Like it's always on Northern Irish news if you watch that, just that it never makes the mainstream news, as in the BBC at 6 kind of thing. And I think my accent offended that person, me making that statement. How do you know more? Even though, if anything, you are way more ignorant than what I've just said. You actually don't know that much, and you are from the same island. But that was the first time I realized that. And it's I know it's happened before, I just can't remember, but just because it was quite recent, that my English accent basically offended them. It wasn't what I was saying, because I know that they are very respectful of me, but I think it's because of my English accent. It was just like the walls went up, and it was like, don't be telling me about my home kind of thing. So that's really interesting, because I thought we were moving into a different world. That wasn't the thing. And it's really interesting that I have to remind myself, like, yeah, I identify as London Irish, but my accent will offend some people sometimes, and I have to just respect that. I don't have a problem with that, as long as the person's sound. But I don't. Yeah, and it came to the forefront, and it's never really happened before, and it was like, wow, okay, sometimes I still have to be a bit careful, but that's okay, as long as we talk about it. We're in a safe space. I think that's how the walls are pushed and people can move on. But yeah, it's interesting. And at the Irish Centre, we spoke about today about the centre has been here since the 50s. So we get all the generations of Irish people coming in here, and they have all their own versions of Ireland, because they left maybe in the 50s, they left in the 60s. And then not only yesterday were 2 girls who had just moved to Dublin, were looking for just part-time bar work. It's still happening, the diaspora and people moving and emigrating and things like that. And the Irish Centre is always still a home and a hub for people to come and be looked after. But yeah, like, being careful and making sure that you don't offend anyone or upset anyone or push it too far with someone, because they come from a different generation. and respecting that, but also everybody moving together at the same time. It is really interesting, and unfortunately, due to politics, I think Northern Ireland still is at heart going forward, but because of certain people in power, a big issue has been brought up again, and it's stirring up issues in Northern Ireland again from history, and people who are uneducated or ignorant are starting to come out of the woodworks, and it's old sectarianism, which has not been around for a very long time. I know it's always there, but not as thick as it usually is, and that's starting to come back, which was a topic I spoke about today with someone. So it's interesting times for Northern Ireland again, and the fact that progress is being made and has been made, but certain things that are happening in Westminster, nowhere near them, and nothing that they voted for, are bringing that all back. And so the idea, there's this shift as well of, will Northern Ireland eventually, will we just have one island? And it's really interesting, because I would say a lot of people who are very, strong about Northern Ireland, who would never want to join the Republic, would probably now join the Republic because they don't want to do anything with Brexit. So, yeah, I think because of that as well, I have to be careful about what I say. And you're always reading your audience. I think Kate will agree, like even having this accent for your whole life, you always read the audience before you say something. And when you're in good company and what you can say and things like that. But yeah, I just wanted to say that it was really interesting that happened quite soon, quite recently. But nothing bad.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think a lot of the people from the north, and probably the Republic as well, would also relate to that idea of being careful what you say in certain situations. I know Hannah and me would definitely have had that where we grew up. You'd have to be very, very, careful about what you said in certain certain situations. Roisin, just going back a little bit and also please, anybody else, please put stuff in the chat or let me know if you want to say something. It's much richer if we get as many people as possible to contribute. But that just seems quite striking. You told that story about your accent offending someone. And then you spoke also earlier in the conversation about being bullied in school because of you identifying as Irish. So that's quite striking to have both of those different extremes and where you kind of sit in the middle of that. And I'm interested in both of your perspectives and anyone else who wants to contribute to this as well about what that is in the middle. And you talked about, both of you spoke about London Irish and it being the 33rd county or whatever. And I know there's such a, is that something, is there profile, is there support, is there community that you have found helpful or useful?
My experience of the London Irish community has just exploded since doing this play. Like previously, my London Irish community was, my mum, her cousins, their kids, like who have actually, a lot of them have come over and moved to the same area in London that my mum set up camp in, because they were like, well, cousin Karen's over there, so I guess we'll move to that area as well. So I've always grown up living very near a lot of my cousins. So that was my sort of like personal London Irish community. But then doing this play, it's kind of been slightly mind-blowing to me, like how big the network is. And I was saying to you guys before this talk started that one of the amazing things we saw in the show was that our audiences at the beginning of the run were primarily English, because that was just the usual audience of that particular theatre we were performing in. And then as the run went on, more and more and more Irish people started coming to the run. And you could always tell, because the laughs fall differently depending on if you've got more English or more Irish, or sometimes you could even be like, I think there's a lot of second generation in tonight. And it was just wonderful to meet more and more people coming to the show who'd heard about it through the sort of wider London Irish network and community, who would show up and introduce themselves in the bar afterwards and kind of tell us their stories and their takes on it. So yeah, I was quite ignorant actually to the wider London Irish community till I did the show, and now I'm kind of astonished. I didn't know it was so big.
Yeah, Russian. I don't know if you've got any.
I just must be like an Irish bloodhound or something. I just either sniff everyone out and I find them, or they just find me. Yeah. I think depending on your school was also a factor of like connecting to your London Irishness. Like I went to a Catholic girls' secondary school, which had in my year a really strong like Irish generation like connection, and all the nuns that were still at the school were Irish as well. So I think because of that and because of the church, my 6 best friends all have either second or third generation Irish, and that's because we found each other at school. You're gonna it's very weird when I actually say it out loud, but my 2 best friends have the same name as me. So I actually go by Fletcher and they go by Flynn and Cormac. So we are known as the 3 Roisin's, but we've been in each other's lives so much that we actually forget that we've got the same name. But it was a really strong year. Like there were 4 Roisin's in one year. There was like 5 Sineads, like probably about 15 Neves. No, there was
I think I was the only Irish person in my year.
I really think it depends on what school you went to in London as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I didn't have anyone Irish in my year at school. I don't think. All my friends are like fully English.
Yeah. I mean, a night out with the 3 Russians, that just sounds like
sign me up.
A recipe for disaster.
You're better off actually going on holiday, because that passport control.
Folks, I do want to open it up now, but I just want to, there's a comment here that's just come through the chat. The conversation has really made me think. My own opinions being challenged. Sorry, doing a 3-year-old's bedtime, so can't jump on to talk. But as a Northern Irish person married to a 2nd-generation Irishman, half Egyptian, half Irish, living in England, it's made me reflect on my own built-in beliefs. Thanks for that. Again, just going to throw it open and see if anybody wants to unmute themselves and to contribute in your own experiences or thoughts, or just from reflections, what you've heard, or any questions.
Hi.
Hey, Janice, you all right?
How are you? Amazing conversation. And yeah, I definitely agree with like beliefs being challenged. I think like I'm from Dublin, born and bred, like the whole family and all the bits. But to live over here and to kind of realize that you would kind of see conversations being friends that are Northern or from Dublin. And I suppose just because you're Irish doesn't mean that you know every single thing what's happening in the North and with the Republic. And I think people can take a lot of ownership of just like Irish, but not actually understand those complexities. So like to listen to what you're saying and about the play and everything like that, it really is something like, as like a person from Dublin, and I don't really have that many friends that are from the North, to actually hear that perspective on it is so key and informative, rather than being like, oh, well, I'm from Ireland, sure, I know, that kind of way. You know, because it's not the same but different, that kind of. Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much. Like honestly, it's been really, really eye-opening, I suppose, as well. Obviously, Jesus, know what's going on, but to have people that have lived experience there, and even whether it's generational or you've actually lived there, and it's a completely different thing to kind of just say, oh, I'm from here and I can understand everything just because I have that, you know what I mean?
I think that was I was going to say, I think that was definitely something that we found when we were rehearsing the play, that like we had Rach and Cormac, who were 1st generation raised in Northern Ireland, and then we had me, I'm 2nd generation raised in England, and then we had Aoife, who's 2nd generation, her parents are both from Dublin, she was raised in Newcastle. So we had like a real mix, and there were certain moments where there would always be a hole in someone's knowledge about it. And we were like, we were talking earlier about sort of like, oh, I've got superiority on this subject or that subject because of my personal experience, but no one's ever going to know everything. that's going on over there. And so it really became kind of like a mission of like finding and sharing facts with each other. And we had sort of a rule implemented. It was like, there's no stupid questions. There's a lot of complicated stuff going on. We're discussing a lot of big themes. Like we really had to remove any sense of like judgment. If someone came to the table and was like, hands up, I actually don't know what you're talking about. I know I grew up there, but I don't understand what this bit is. And it was just a great process of us all kind of like learning together, which was lovely.
Lovely. Yeah, I love that, Janice, what you were saying as well about Irishness and what that actually means and who gets to claim that. And I lived in Zambia for 10 years, and there was a very, they're kind of moving away from this in terms of the embassy there for sure, but there was, there's a committee, there's a Wild Geese committee that organizes Irish events. And, as somebody who's moving to a different country, that's always a really lovely community to fall into, but it's a very specific view of what Irishness is. And it is, Kate, it's that scene from your play. It is the, the paddy hats, it is the Guinness, it is the very, two-dimensional Irishness. And it's such a interesting, it feels very dated given the context of the conversations that we're having, where there's such a spectrum of Irishness and, first, second generation, the London Irish community, that kind of variation is just, it's so complex.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to jump in at this point. We could probably go on for another 10 minutes or so. So I think it's just very interesting. We kind of get into the belly of the beast. It'd be lovely to get, even if it's just some thoughts or any kind of comments on what's been said, or anything, if you just want to put it into the chat, or if anyone wants to unmute themselves. I feel if I was really cruel, I would just go like around like this and just pick people.
And be like, you.
And take their cameras off. I won't do that. I promise I won't do that. But it is tempting. Just any thoughts on anything we've just talked about? Any comments people want to put into the chat? Hannah, I don't know about you, if you've got any thoughts on anything we've been kind of talking about that you want to throw in at this point.
You said you weren't going to put anyone on the spot, Adam.
Except you.
It's not really in the same vein, but I was thinking, I don't know if you feel the same. I mean, I've been in England for 15 years, maybe, but I find that I've had to bend to fit here, like even trying to keep hold of my Northern Irishness is not always possible here. Like, you have to talk slightly differently to be understood, and in certain circles you maybe feel you couldn't fly your flag, which is another contentious thing, obviously.
Which one?
Yeah, exactly.
Both.
Yeah. But I was just thinking, outside of home, that Irishness again, for me anyway.
Yeah. I mean, what does that look like? Can you unpick that a little bit?
I think it was different when I was younger. I think now I'm maybe more comfortable in my own skin, and I, things like I'd hate to lose my accent now, and I've really try and hold on to it. I think as well because I'm an actor. When I moved over, I felt I had to be neutral. Well, I was told I had to be neutral. Like, could you try? They do a tape and say, do a neutral accent. What is that? That to them is a Southern English.
Yeah.
That's not neutral to me.
Yeah.
So, I had to bend and fit a mold that wasn't my own. But as I've got older, I've tried to reclaim my Northern Irishness, which is great. Great realization.
Yeah. And for you, Hannah, just on that point, I suppose, you primarily lived in Liverpool and London?
Liverpool and London, yeah. And
do you feel there is support for the Northern Irish diaspora? Do you feel there is a community? Do you feel that there's something you can be part of? Do you need that? Is that?
I mean, certainly in Liverpool, it's almost like you haven't left home, when I got in the taxi at Bold Street, and the driver heard my accent, he goes, "Welcome home, girl." So it was like I didn't need it at all.
Was he from Australia?
All right. All right. It's been a while since I've been in Liverpool. But here in London, I probably could do with more of a sense of community, or I haven't sought it out. But I'm lucky because I have family here, and yeah.
Welcome to the London Irish.
Lovely. I don't know, Ginger, if you wanted to say something. If that was, I'm not sure if you were jumping in there. If not, don't worry if it's not. No worries. I don't know if anyone else has got any comments or any contributions they want to throw in at this point. It'd be really interesting to hear from some other people as well, just your thoughts on some of the topics that we've been discussing, or any questions for anyone in the that's spoken earlier. If you want to, unmute yourself, or if you just want to put it into the chat, I can read it out for you. Anything at all? Yeah, Brendan has just said, well done to you all, and thank you for a really informative talk. I'm from Wexford myself, and I totally agree that people from the Republic feel they already have a wealth of knowledge on the North, when that is definitely not the case. Interesting. Thanks for that, Brendan. Thank you. I think what's really interesting about this network, the Immigrant Support Program, is they do fund lots of different organizations in the UK and beyond. But I think for me, as someone from the North, I feel that there is a lot of activities, and there is a lot in it for the Irish diaspora, but specifically for the North, I feel it's very, very limited. I think that's key why I was really, when I read about your play and whenever I saw it, I was really intrigued, because I feel like it's something that is not catered for, or I had a very similar experience to you, where I'd written a play because of when I moved back from Zambia. It was around the time of Brexit, and people were talking about the North, talking about it, but no one from the North was being asked, or you certainly didn't hear their voices on the news. Sorry, Kate, go on.
No, sorry, I was just excitedly agreeing with you, because that was exactly what I was experiencing at the time as well. And I think it's a testament to how little Northern Irish people are catered to, like, culturally, that we had such an influx of people coming to the play, because they were like, oh my God, there's something about us, for us, and it's actually written by one of us as well, which I think made a big difference. But yeah, there's not a lot out there. I mean, people reference like Dairy Girls, but it's sort of like the one thing that people can claim. And the Ferryman was written by an Englishman, and there are some tropes, when the banshees come in, I'm a bit like, okay, cool.
The drunken uncle who drinks whiskey first thing in the morning. Everybody,
but we all push the tables back and have a Kaylee, even though it's actually time to do the harvest. There was a lot there. My mum was sort of twitching next to me when we watched it. I was like, shh, wait till the interval. There's not.
That's so interesting. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was just saying that there's not a huge amount out there, and that definitely one of the things that I'm trying to encourage any Northern Irish performers or actors that I meet through casting them in my work. I'm like, write your own stuff, because I'm a performer as well. That's how I started, and I got so frustrated with the things I was being cast in because I started writing my own. And I was like, I think the more Northern Irish voices that we're getting out there, who are telling their own stories as opposed to just recycling stories written for them by English people, the better.
And beyond the Troubles narrative and the bullet bombs.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Hannah, you're kind of, I see you've just been doing a TV series as well. So and I know some of the work that you've been doing. You seem to be working on things that are beyond that narrative.
Yeah. But I was going to say it's only recently that the likes of the BBC are looking, actively looking for regional voices, and the fact that they have to, do a press release about that, and that it's not already just part of the conversation is kind of crazy. But I just finished filming a show that's going to be set in Belfast, or that is set in Belfast, modern day Belfast, about modern life beyond, like, post Troubles. And kind of,
What's it called so I can watch it?
It's called Blue Lights.
Fabulous. I will be watching that.
It's about the PSNI really, and about the unique kind of the unique experiences they're up against in Belfast, as you know, unlike anywhere else in the UK. So they're starting to come out, and it's written by two guys from Belfast, and the producer's she's from Derry. So it feels authentic, and you know it's starting to happen. But I agree, it's crazy that it's taken so long.
Taken this long, yeah.
Just before we wrap up, guys, I'm going to ask people who are on the call, if you're not comfortable saying anything, that's completely fine, but it'd be lovely to get just any kind of last reflections, because we're going to wrap up shortly. Any last comments or reflections, you can say it yourself or put it in the chat and I'll feed it back. That'd be really helpful just to kind of bring the conversation to a close. I mean, I'd say bring the conversation to a close, but it is really interesting to see, you know, I'm interested, Roisin, from Kate, just what you said about the ferryman. I have to say, I went, however many seats there were in the theatre, there was 500 seats, and at the end, 495 people stood up for a standing ovation, and the 5 people I was with were absolutely livid and furious. So I had the exact same experience as you. But I'm interested, Roisin, then from the London Irish Centre, do you have bespoke cultural offerings that do reflect the unique identity of the North as well? Is that something that's catered for?
It is. Well, we're not just in terms of the culture side, we are also a charity that provides information and advice, and we have a survivors charity as well, which sort of branches from institutional abuse from the church, etc., and school, but also the Troubles. So we have that going on, and then a big movement with the Northern Irish and Repeal the Eights, but also in Northern Ireland with the abortion laws. We have a lot of there's been a lot of discussion and artwork and things like that brought to the forefront. The London Irish Centre is actually in the middle right now in terms of how it looks as a charity and how it functions to the public. It's shifted in this January this year. For 25 years, especially the building itself. So in terms of not the advice centre or the culture side, we also have a library and an archive. And I tell you, they send in everything for this archive, which is lovely. But it's a big step for the Irish Centre. So after 25 years of it outsourcing just for anyone to look after, they've now decided that no, we're going to make it ours. It's going to be ours. We're going to sort of have more control on what we want on and what we want on in the space and how we can utilise the space and how it can, you know, open up to the island of Ireland is what I say. So no more Northern Irish and Irish, you know, kind of thing. It's the island of Ireland. So anyone who's from there to, you know, represent them in some way. And I was having a very funny conversation. We have a handyman called Yarrow, who is from Slovakia, and we were having a beer the other day, and one of the bar staff, we were talking about Slovakia, and it was like, he's just very Irish, isn't it? He's just very small and Catholic, and you know. And Yarrow says, "Yeah, I love it here." Like, and he has a very thick Slovakian accent. He was like, "Yeah, you are very Irish. You know, there's small place, small population, but we go elsewhere," kind of thing. So I feel like here, like everyone always can find a connection. There was an absolutely beautiful moment today. We had a Caribbean funeral, a wake, and some of the girls left that, and we have a piano in the welcome bit, which we welcome for people to play. It's very out of tune, but you're more than welcome to go on top of it. And she started singing along, and one of our from the charity side was in the bar, and they were having a chat, and he's from Belfast, and his grandfather is Sri Lankan. So it was this whole thing of this woman saying, "Well, I'm Irish," and he was like, "Yeah, I know, that's great. And I think she thought we were going to go, no, you're not, because you're black. And it was this beautiful moment of, oh, yeah, no, that's okay. He's like, so am I. And she was like, well, I'm from Montserrat in the Caribbean, and there is a massive connection with the Black Irish community in Montserrat, and the connection of the Irish slaves going over, you know, hundreds of years ago, and obviously the African slaves going over, but that sort of intertwining and now creating their own community. And this woman saying that she's Irish, and she was like, no, it's a big thing in Montserrat, like we celebrate St. Patrick's Day, and we're like, yeah, we know, you're Irish. So it's great. It's this whole sense of like identity, and it like all mixing together, and you know, having that conversation like, oh, am I going to offend you, or where, what you know, what reaction am I going to get? And I would 100% say that my generation, the generation below me, it's always going to be, yeah, you're Irish, it's fine.
I think interesting also, this is an interesting dynamic because it's essentially a conversation that's happening. I think all four of us who are talking are in London actually at the minute. So it's a conversation that's going this direction. And I think it'd be really interesting to have this conversation going the other direction with communities living in Ireland as well, to discuss the contribution of the diaspora, of the first, second, third generation Irish they're having elsewhere in the world, economically, culturally, politically. I think it's something that would be really, really useful actually.
I think it would also, I mean, Kate's dad probably might have a better understanding, but I would actually say there is not just an Irish divide in terms of like how you lived your life, but I think there is a Southern and North English divide. Yeah. So I would say a Liverpudlian's experience is probably similar in terms of the Irish connection and background, but the way you grew up is not going to be like London at all.
Yeah.
And I think that really factors into like communities and the way that we, you know, the sectarianism in Liverpool. I didn't even think that was a thing until I went to university, you know, and I was always told of the Everton and Liverpool divide, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, to actually see it, and that they still march both sides, you know, on their days, is strange, because you're like, I'm not in Northern Ireland. But I would say that has a different connection then, and you know, people's lived experiences through, you know, I would say Liverpudlians have such a connection with, you know, Northern Ireland as well because of Margaret Thatcher. So there's that element as well. But yeah, I would say that it would be interesting to hear from, if we could like, the conversation could push up to the north, because it would be I'm telling you, it'd be a very different story.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you
my dad next time.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you for just if you get any kind of final thoughts, because I'm going to just wrap up now. I mean, these conversations are just pockets. They're just little opportunities for us to open up these ideas and just have little interactions. But the idea is that they're ongoing. We have one next week, which I'll tell you about in a second as well. But I just want to thank the Immigrant Support Programme for allowing us the space to have these conversations and to make different connections with communities across the UK. Again, conversations are ongoing. Rushing, some of the stuff you've just talked about there, I think race is a really interesting one that will be really, you know, I think that's one we'll definitely be interested to chat about in a future conversation as well. I think also, what would be really interesting is to, as much as possible, you know, share within our networks when these conversations are happening, so we can get as many people just to be part of it like we did today. I'm just going to read out a couple of thoughts that have just come in. Martin has said, has anyone had the experience that sometimes our northern accents are viewed as being backward, or that we are lesser than because we are not as sophisticated as the English tongue? I think we carry a natural inferiority complex that we need to rid ourselves of as a people. Someone else has said they've also been trying unsuccessfully to encourage a toddler that it's bedtime. Really interesting discussion. Remember a fairly recent theatre experience that was riddled with stereotypes of Irish life and culture. So really good to hear about authentic stories and voices starting to get a bit more of a look in. I've loved the chat this evening. Thoughts are swirling now. Identity is so individual and complex, but thank you for making me reflect on my own. So folks, I just want to thank everybody for coming to this tonight. I really want to thank Hannah, Kate and Roisin for being such a lovely group of people to stir these ideas in the air. And just I want to hand over to you guys if there's anything final you want to say just on this kind of topic that we've been discussing, a foot in both islands.
Just thank you so much for having us. Like it's such a blessing to have a space to talk about this kind of thing where it feels like comfortable and like we're able to just share ideas. So thank you so much. It's been such a joy.
Well, thank you so much, Kate.
Yeah, I second that. These conversations are had, but I feel like they're had in good company, because we know that if things are said, it's going to be okay. But I think these conversations need to push out of that, and things like this need to happen a bit more. And like I said, my lived experience is going to be completely different to somebody else's, but they may be second or third generation Irish at the same time. And to have that, space to just say all that is just, it's great. I will say as well that if you do want to apply for an Irish passport, here at the Irish Centre we do have a service to support you in your application, because it's very difficult, and it's all computer.
It's very hard.
It's very difficult.
So much paperwork.
Especially if you've never had one before. If you were very lucky like me, I can just renew it. So, but yeah, if you've never had one before and it's super confusing, and the embassy, I know they are funding this, but your passport centre is a little bit difficult at the moment. So yeah, feel free to go on the website, and there's an advice there, and you can do it over the phone. So even if you're not in London, even though we try and get you to come in person, I'm sure someone over the phone will help you.
Okay, thank you. And then that leaves it to Hannah as the last person to say something extremely profound.
It's got to be really
extremely profound. The request.
No, just thank you for having me. Super interesting, Kate. It was really nice reading your work. I'd like to read the rest of it or see it performed at some point. If
we'll be in it.
Again.
Yeah. The dream is you both perform it at the Irish Centre. So then
I love that. Down for
so
it.
I think
make it happen.
Yeah. Brendan, take note.
Lovely. Well, folks, I won't delay you for too much longer, but I really just want to thank you. Really, so interesting to have all your perspectives, and really nice for everybody who contributed as well. We do have another one next week, which is on Wednesday, and it's called Doha, Dubai, Derry. We've got some special guests, and we're talking about post the Northern Irish election with Stormont being down. It's a fun and satirical look at where we go next and where we find ourselves. So that's next Wednesday at 7 o'clock. I've put the link into the chat for everyone as well. If people want to sign up to that, then I can give you more information. But otherwise, it'd be really lovely if people just wanted to give us a little bit of feedback, because it's really helpful for us to decide how we format future discussions and what kind of things people want to talk about and what they'd like to see. So I'll leave the chat open for a bit if anybody wants to put any of that down. But otherwise, I just really want to thank everybody for coming. I did wonder when I saw the sun out, were we going to get anyone coming to the conversation today, but it's been really lovely to have the people that have been able to join us. This will go up online, so we'll keep the conversation going. That will stimulate further discussion. But at this point, guys, just massive thank you so much. And I hope everybody can join us next week for the next creative conversation. So thank you. And then, 7 o'clock next Wednesday. And we'll speak to you then. We'll keep the conversation going then. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Cheers. Kate, Hannah, Roshan, if you want to just stay on for a bit, we can just kind of have a bit of a chat. I'm going to stop the recording now. Cheers, guys. Thank you.